Hey,
Mhm.
Ethan, do you think your employer should pay for your CPD?
Yes, short answer. Yes, the employer should pay for the CPD. Yeah, I have a reason because if I'm an employer, okay, I used to run a small company and always boast that our company has the technical know-how. How many employee has been trained to do this job? And our clients also interested in it because they have to when the tendering process and we need to say that okay we have we have that much of manpower we have our manpower has been certified for this kind of certificates and we can do this we can handle this kind of things these problems etc. So it's a business case, right? For example, like when you go for, and also when you tender for a project, you can also submit your organization structures, your staff profile. Now, I think if your staff profile is everybody's newbie, no upgrade, not there is no certificates relevant to today's modern world. Nobody's know how to use Nobody's know. I'm not so sure there is a certificate related to AI, but anyway, maybe Revit architecture or that kind of certificates. The what's that Green Star Homestar certificates, right?
Yeah,
So if
Homestar.
you yeah Homestar certificates, that kind of things, and if your team doesn't have Homestar certificates, and your employers want to get Green Star building, I think your team has no chance to win the contract, isn't it? So that means if you want to go to that niche, you need to do that. And we're always moving to that kind of directions of green and sustainable buildings and not just the building industry everywhere. So your teams need to be relevant. You need to be relevant. And for that, you need to look ahead and train your workforce. To train the workforce, you need to pay the CPD. Otherwise, your team members may or may not upgrade the knowledge or get the certificate by himself. And if he or she got this certificate, he will leave and he will try the opportunities because you're not appreciating Homestead certificates. Example, he will go to another company which selling green buildings as a service and sell his talent or sell his hard talent to through the company. So that's how is it. So it's not just the architecture, other areas as well. So they need to have that kind of the employers or the company owners need to have that kind of mindset and try to they need to train their workforce to relevant. So that's why as I said yes the employer should for pay the CPD for the workforce.
Lots of our professions require us to do CPD. So if you belong to the NZIA or the ARB, then you're required to prove that you've been doing your CPD. And if you belong to the
Yes.
ADNZ, you're required again to prove that you've been doing your CPD. And
Yeah.
so you have to do it. It's not like you can get out of it. I looked up the Law Society in New Zealand. I
Hmm.
looked up the Law Society, and what they said is that there's no legal requirement for your employer to pay your CPD.
Hmm.
But what they also said was that you should first of all ask them to pay your CPD. And when I thought about it, if my employer didn't pay for my CPD, if they didn't pay for me to belong to these organizations that I do go and learn, and I attend these ADNZ and I attend the NZIA meetings, really to make sure that what we're teaching is what the stakeholders need. Now, if they
Hmm.
don't pay for me to belong to those things, I'm not going to be able to go to those meetings. I'm certainly not going to pay for it myself. Now, in the private industry, um, it's a good idea for the employer to pay because, as you say, you're upskilling your staff. You're making sure your staff are up to the right level. It allows you, and from a marketing point of view, to point out that your staff are to the top of their game. We are highly
Yeah.
trained. We're learning the latest. We're going to these things and we're learning the latest. If you don't go to these things and learn about the fire code and learn about what's going and what's changing, it's actually going to be a negative for your business. So what will happen is that you may make a mistake because you didn't know what you might call negligence. So
Yeah.
that's one part that I think you need to be careful of. But the other part is if you want your employees to be a team, then surely paying for their CPD, making CPD part of that culture is something that would improve that team nature. That keeping good staff, I think when they do tests of what is the most important thing to staff, I could do a quick Google search if I can find it. But sometimes people have done these surveys about what's the main thing that makes staff feel comfortable at work or stay at work. Money is not the top answer. You think it is because everyone leaves because they get more money somewhere else. But actually, the money isn't the answer. The answer is normally that the people don't feel valued. They don't feel valued because you didn't pay their CPD, you didn't foster that team spirit, they didn't feel they were part of a winning team. These are the things that cause people to leave and get other jobs. And I think that paying for the CPD and encouraging CPD is an interesting way to do it.
Yeah. And there's one instant. What happened was my friend, he migrated to Canada and he worked hard and he got the professional engineer, registrations in Canada, British Columbia. And after that, he went to the HR and said, okay, now they call it professional engineer or registered engineer. I don't know. He told his HR department, and the HR department say, doesn't matter, we don't use it. So what happened is that he started looking for a job because HR doesn't care about his professional engineers and etc. That's also being from a normal person to become a professional engineer is a lot of work to do, and he wasn't appreciated. Same thing when we talk about CPD. If you become a professional, you also need to maintain all the CPDs points yearly. So it's very important. So the main companies doesn't even values or never celebrate he becomes a professional engineer. CPD is far from it. So he just resign and look for another companies which align with his interests. That's why I think I agree with you to value your staff performance, and also going to CPD events is I have an opportunity to know what industry is happening, what my peers are doing, right? What the trends is. If I stay in my office, I do my job. How can I know what the other peoples are doing it? Isn't it? Because, for example, is it sustainability as a trend? Are there any new trends coming up? I have no way to know what are the new technology. CPD is a way people share their knowledge. So yeah, CPD events are really important to, for example, like another thing is law or regulation change. So go backs is really important for people to know, share, and a way to grow their workforce and self-improvement, also to improvement of the company. So if the employer, the boss wants to bring up their workforce and their business, he or she need to pay for the CPD. I think actually it's not so much for example, like for CPD events, maybe $1,000 per. Maybe if he or she, the companies can't pay for that, maybe $1,000 set aside for the funds, or they for $1,000. For example, they can attend so many CPD for membership fees, so which is really good. So that's my advice to the employers as well. Please pay for CPD to your staff so that it's also come back. They will bring back the new ideas and technologies, and it will benefit to your companies in the long term. And another thing, there is one thing is, okay, my company, it was a French company. What my boss usually did is, okay, if a staff come back from the CPD or a training events, he encouraged the staff to share what he has learned with a colleague. So that means not just the staff who went to for the CPD, he has a duty to teach and share the other stuff what he has learned.
So it spreads that knowledge throughout the company.
Yes, and it's free for.
It's free for the second person. So I was having a look on Seek's website, and the Seek website said the top 3 reasons why employees leave their jobs, and I'll link this in the show notes. So the number 1 reason people leave their job, 53% of people leave their job because of the work conditions or the environment. Now, what you're talking about, encouraging people to go away and learn more, and then bring it back and sharing it with their colleagues, Surely that helps the environment. It makes more of a team culture
Yeah.
that we're all
Yeah.
helping each other. The 39% of people leave because of organizational changes or restructuring, and 31% people leave because of management or leadership in the business, which again, if you're not sharing, if you're not encouraging the CPD, you're encouraging people, you're showing bad management, encouraging
Yeah.
people to do it on their own, that kind of thing. So 31% of people leave because of management or leadership in the business, bad leadership in the business. That's 50. I know these numbers actually don't work out correctly. There must be some overlap with some of these numbers, but
Yeah.
53% leave for one reason and 31 leave for another. That's a lot of people leave for those top reasons. And
Yeah.
I just think that we could encourage employers to encourage CPD, encourage people to be up to date with their knowledge, and encourage them to bring it back and share it in the office, share what they've learned,
Yeah.
make it a fun thing. Let's provide morning tea. Let's provide Friday drinks, something that actually encourages that sharing of information. There's
Yeah.
some companies I know in Hawke's Bay, and they get so one of my students has just gone to work there, and she mentioned to someone about G13, the plumbing and drainage, and they were engineers, so they didn't know much about it, and so they said, we don't know, and they said to her, hey, next week can we get you to do a presentation on that, and it's an in-house office CPD. So every
Yeah.
week they try to have in-house office CPD where each person does a small presentation. Now what that means is it means that that person gets time to prepare their presentation. They get time to do the presentation. Everybody gets paid to be at the presentation, and then I'm sure they have some drinks or something to go with it, some kai to go with it. But that again is a great way of building bonds, building
Yes.
the team ethic. You're helping somebody, then next week someone else is helping you. So it's a great way of building that team structure. And I think that by building the team, you help each other to work harder. You're more
Yes.
reliant. You're more keen to give a bit more if you like the people you're on your team.
Yeah.
Yeah. The legal answer seems to be that the employer is not required to do it.
Yeah.
But my answer is that if your employer is going to the letter of the law and saying, no, I'm not paying because I'm not required to do it, you'll be looking for a job where someone actually encourages you.
Yeah. And when I learned law, and sometimes the law says, okay, if there are so many things, the law said, okay, you can do that, you cannot do that. But in the real world, it's not that straightforward because we have to think about relationships. For example, your clients doesn't pay you the money, right? For a lot, that happens a lot to the architectural designer. And by law, if the client doesn't pay you the money, you don't need to do this job. But it's hard to implement it, so it's hard straight away. You need to think about human-to-human relationships. CPD is also paying CPD is also the same thing. But just my opinion is, yeah, the employer should pay for the CPD, which is really good, which is bringing your workforce and building bonds between all the staff with your company as well.
It sounds like you agree with me. While I was writing some
Yes.
notes for today's podcast, I wrote here, if the employer pays for the CPD, what's the benefit for the employer? And we've talked about that, how it's going to help their
Yeah, we
business.
did.
And I also wrote, if the employer doesn't pay, how does the employee feel? And I think we've covered that as well. And I think that's really important for the employer to look at. How does my staff feel if I don't pay?
They don't. They feel like they are not valued by the company. Right.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ethan, thank you very much for the chat.
Okay.
That was a great
Thank
discussion.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you very
So what
much.
about next week then? Again.
I don't know. Have we got any ideas for next week? Hey, I got one. Oh, I got a couple of
Yeah.
ideas. You can choose
Oh
which one you
wow.
want. One of my ideas was, how do you get work from overseas? That would be
Okay,
one.
that's cool.
And the other one I've been looking at is, because I was with these prospective students, and most of them wanted to go to university. And I'm thinking, what's the difference between going to university for 5 years and
Hmm.
doing the Polytech 2-year diploma, then 3 years in the industry? So which
So
one do you think we should do?
We'll talk about how to get a job from overseas and work from New Zealand, so online jobs or something like that.
You've worked from
Since we,
overseas. I've worked from
yeah, I did.
overseas.
Yeah,
All right. I
and
like that. I'm looking forward to finding out how I can get work overseas, Ethan.
yes, let's do it next week. All right.
See you later.
See you next week. Bye.